Hello, everyone. This is Brother Benson Media, and today is a Thursday, and we usually have a talk show. Before we go into the main discussion, may I take this opportunity to let my guest introduce himself to our viewers? My brother.
Thank you, Brother Benson. I am Kennedy Sankara. On my ID, they call me Kennedy Ochieng. I hail from the lakeside city of Kisumu. I'm a resident of the uh, city of Nairobi, or the Pearl of Africa. And here in Nairobi, I'm engaged in a lot around the matters to do with politics, governance, or good governance, strategic planning, and youth leadership. I am an activist. I am a youth leader in various political organizations. And above all, I'm a patriotic citizen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Sankara, for first of all honoring our invite and for your introduction. And today we want to just talk about our history about Kenya, especially each and every election. We usually find ourselves in a very difficult situation whereby there's violence, and after the violence, what comes in is leaders sitting together to have a dialogue. If just to give you like a few history, you remember very well history from KANU to NDP merger, to NUSU MKATE in 2007, to Handshake in 2018, to dialogue right now that we have. In your own view, do you think all this is good for the country or bad for the country?
Well, matters to do with the dialogue, I would say it's a good bad idea for the country, and I would give the pros and cons for my statement, for my position. The attribute of dialogue has greatly or in great way impacted on our political transformation and maturity. Been a big deal. We've had constitutional amendments that have given the constitution a life that recognizes the people as the sovereign power. For instance, the 2010 constitution is a culmination of post-election disagreement. And with that in mind, we now have a constitution that brought devolution. These are independent concepts that had not been implemented until 2010. And it's a process that started all the way in 2005. So I would say that uh, the aspect of dialogue or handshake is a good or bad scenario for the country because politicians, and I mean to say categorically, politicians tend to take advantage of the situation. Remember, we have several politicians holding leadership positions, and again, we have a few leaders holding political offices. All these factors manipulates an individual's character, integrity, and even personality. Because politicians, they know, in his book, Lee Kinyanjui says these are political cousins. Whether they are in opposition or in government, they will always be together. And being in opposition and in government, those are relative statements. Maybe for people who really don't know what it means to be in opposition or in government. But for me, I believe these guys are usually in government. They are never in opposition because they can broker a deal today or tomorrow, and you'll find yourself left at the stage without a bus. I mean, a traffic light indicating the bus is stopping. You'll be told the bus left long time ago. You won't even trace the route. By the time you come to the realization that you are on the stage alone, it shall be too late. It will be raining economically, raining security wise, raining politically. And that is where we are as a country today.
Okay, thank you very much. So, what really occasions that? What really occasions after having this maybe um, the violence and everything, then we have this negotiation. But even prior, what usually makes it possible for them, like now, let's just decide to go for negotiation, yet very well we know what is happening.
Well, that seeks to interrogate the personality of the people we call our leaders. Remember, if we go for an election is like a coin. It has two sides, the top and the bottom surface. So it's either you win or you lose. In an event that we lose, what do we stand to gain in a winner takes it all scenario or a loser refuse the outcome? Then we seek to interrogate the process. Remember, election is not an event. It is a process that culminates from the polling station all the way to the National Tallying Center. So, by me saying so, when the process is dubious, then the outcome must be rejected. And that has been the problem in Kenya. The constitution is not a creative convenience. And that's why I do say that the constitution was constitutionally constituted to constitute a constituent of constitutionalism. In other words, there is no lacuna or for excuses. The rule of law must be respected from process one to the rest. I've done public procurement. When you are doing tendering or tender evaluation or tender advertisement, before you can award a particular company a tender, you'll have to prove the reason as to why A qualified and not B. So we must subject ourselves within the constitutional limelights and limits, where a process that dictates that the transparency emanates from the polling station all the way to the National Tallying Center, we must abide by that. We must consider the accuracy of the gadgets that we use to run an entire electoral cycle. We must prove adequate security or provide adequate security for the electoral managers. We don't want to go to an election where an IBC returning officer is killed. The entire election becomes fraudulent because you cannot kill the judge and still claim that you are innocent. No, we must play by the rules. So the handshake ain't a bad idea. What drives us here is in non-functional, independent, constitutionally mandated offices. They have failed the people of Kenya. And pursuant to the provisions of Article 1.1 of the 2010 Constitution, that says the sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya, and they shall exercise it in a manner that is consistent with that constitution. Remember, Ben, both parliament, executive, and the judiciary operates on trust. The power that the judiciary expresses, or the executive, or the presidency, or presidency, sorry, or the parliament, these powers belong to the people. So, by these powers belong to the people, where we cannot all sit in parliament and debate. That parliament will be chaotic, messy, and unrealistic. So we have to send somebody to go and sit in that particular house so that representation, which is a key particular role of a legislator. If you read our constitution very well on the roles of members of parliament, there are three or there are more than two, but not limited to the following: representation, oversight, and legislation. I cannot go to parliament to sit and legislate. We need to send somebody. So all these have just said to support the inconsistency of managing electoral cycles. When the process is dubious, the outcome must be sham. And this is where the opposition takes advantage. They say, we have not accepted the results because of ABCD. So before we can even look at how bad or good handshake politics is, the NUSU MKATE or the dialogue politics, we must first dissect or seek to establish, why are we where we are? Have we really exploited the constitutional powers bestowed upon these offices? Have they exercised independence, non-partisan approach to handling elections? No. Remember, we were in an election where the IBC commissioner was under public scrutiny, and one of the presidential contenders was usually speaking for or on behalf of that particular commissioner. I sat in one of our local media stations in an interview with one of the um, controversial IBC commissioners, one of the Cherera Four. And I was very particular on the importance of, or emphasized on the importance of strictly adhering to the provisions of electoral management as per the constitutions and the rules that govern the elections. So the handshake is here because we have failed as a country to protect the integrity of our institutions. That is it. Once the institutions have been weakened to an extent that they can no longer stand on their own, the same politicians will usurp the people's power by manipulating individuals in these positions. What do we end up with? We end up with a contested or chaotic electoral results. This alone, lives are lost, properties lost, the economy is damaged beyond repair, and then we lose on investment. The GDP goes down, the per capita income goes down, the GIF, everything is in shambles. So we just have to respect the constitution and its provisions. The rule of law, remember our constitution is the supreme law of the land. It binds all the offices, both at the national and the county level. And any law that is inconsistent with the provisions of the constitution, I quote from the constitution, is null and void to the extent of its inconsistency. So my issue here is the rule of law. Our strict adherence to the rule of law has culminated into a purportedly weak electoral system, which is not the case. We had people like Musando Chris, we had people like Wafula Chebukati, we had people like Kivitu. Yes, Kivitu. What do we draw from people like Isaac Hassan? The question still runs back to us. Are we really patriotic citizens? Are we in a country where the rule of law is respected? No.
Okay, you spoke about the electoral like IBC, and where we are right now, we do not have any commissioner. And when you look back at 2007, when we had the Kligra report, actually the Kligra report mentioned like for us to have a very credible election from that report is that we need to have very good preparation prior. Yeah, we had like prior preparation. But now, as things stand, we do not have any commissioner in place. Yet time is not waiting on us. Then it will reach a point whereby we are almost maybe like 2 years to the next general election. Then that is when we want to make sure that we put all these commissioners in place. And that one, for me, it will not give us the process of election that we want. What can we do as a country or as the political leaders or people that are involved so that we can make sure that we have good preparation before the main day? Because it's a process. Yeah. Because a process that is done within 10 years, we cannot do it in 3 days.
Sure. So at this particular point in time, it is imperative that the political divides puts aside their selfish interest after the interests of the people of Kenya and Kenya as a country. First, constitution or reconstitution of IBC is a constitutionally documented process where we start from advertisement to vetting, all the way to shortlisting, all the way to the actual nomination. But remember, the IBC reconstitution Wafula was supposed to be out of office as of today, or is about to retire. We don't have a substitute still, but again, we have by elections because in a constitutional democracy, anything is possible. So all we need to do, without going through a lot of words, let us respect the rule of law. What process? How did the IBC commissioners leave office? The opposition protested the process as being shambolic. Then the same people are going to sit down to reconstitute that particular office. In this entire scenario, money is wasted, time is wasted. And you know, in Kenya, I was speaking to a friend of mine from South Africa. Yesterday, it was a Zoom call with another colleague from Zimbabwe and probably one from Congo. And we all came into agreement that our country has one problem. We play politics with everything. We start politicking from August 2022 all the way to December 2027. It is politics. Azimio ends, another name, NASA comes in. NASA ends, Code Coalitions is there. Kenya Kwanza, Jubilee, a lot of politics. So let us first follow the law and its provisions on the reconstitution of IBC. And by the way, let me tell you, we have a super constitution. There is no constitutional crisis on how to appoint these people. The problems we have is a political problem, or is a problem created by politicians for us to believe that there is a real problem in Kenya. But in real sense, there is no problem. The problem is artificial. It is created by people who really know what they want out of that particular problem.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned about winner takes it all, and the loser not accepting the result due to election processes. But when we were enacting the 2010 Constitution, so everybody read it and it was in agreement that this was the best for our country. Did they not see that idea whereby the opposition was not going to be like the opposition was not going to be there, whereby the winner will take everything? Because like that is one of the things that have always been in our conversation, that the winner takes it all is what sometimes triggers the violence. Then we come to the negotiation. So we want a situation whereby we have the winner and the second runner-up become the opposition leader.
Yes, Ben, remember, a winner takes it all is a very complicated constitutional affair. Because if we go to an election and 12 million votes are cast, and then the winner emerges with 7 million, and then this purported loser ends with 6.8 million. Is it fair for the winner to form the government entirely? No. Because where will these 6.9 million people go? How do they feel that a mere 200 vote made them lose the power? And this 200 vote is also protested, claims of rigging and electoral fraud. So you see where we get it wrong. I think it is important that we acknowledge the national diversity in our country. Remember, during the NUSU MKATE, or the handshake government between President Emeritus, the Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, and the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, on 9th of March, they identified particular issues, or they called it the 9-point agenda, as per them. That was ethnic antagonism, that was lack of national ethos, that was inclusivity, that was devolution, that was divisive elections, that was security, that was corruption, that was shared prosperity, that was responsibility, the 9 point agenda. Look at what the NADCO report suggested.
Mhm.
Then compare the two. Where are we headed or where are we coming from? So the NUSU MKATE narrative, just as I said, it's a good or bad thing for the country. But to sum it up, let me say this. The handshake, the winner takes it all is not a good practice in maturing democracy like the one in Kenya. And that's why you find countries like Congo are always in constant violence because of the ethnic polarization in the country. Because even with the March 9th handshake, the decision by the two Itato antagonists to establish a task force that was to design the country's roadmap to a new political prosperity. There were some hardliners, and the country was actually on the brink of collapse. During the election, significant political developments took place, and that shapes the future of our country. Uh, they were evidently witnessed. So the decision by the political figures to bury their personal differences, which I call the decision by political figures to restructure their business. Their business. There's no political differences these people have. It is conflict of business interest. Who earns it? Who earns much more than who? Who controls where than who? Actually, uh, competition for power is the genesis of protracted violence in Kenya's politics. People don't run to offices to lead. People run to offices to show massive power they wield over the others. They run for offices to amass wealth and become or join the circles of untouchables. So I would not say that political differences, because I am fairly intelligent and fairly informed. I have been in the national political discourse for the shortest time possible. I am a fast learner. I have interacted with several figures that you find insulting each other during the day, but they take coffee together in some unnamed restaurants here in Karen and etc. So I would tell you for a fact that there are no political differences. It is just a design to keep the people busy during massive political and economic exploitation. So the winner takes it all is a concept that must be reanalyzed so that we give zero chances to policy to possible sorry. I'm saying the winner takes it all is a political concept that requires readjustments as to create zero chances or room for political violence, where both the winning majority and the losing majority are going to feel the impact of being closer to power.
Okay,
We
there's
need
something.
to readjust our systems of governance so
Mhm,
that we have a scenario where both the winner and the loser,
mhm.
because we have the parliamentary system, the hybrid system. We need to use a super hybrid system so that if we bring in the office of the opposition leader, then
Mhm.
we undermine the roles of the uh, leader of majority or minority in parliament. When we bring in the office of the majority leader, we have a direct connect with the executive. So we really need to fine tune the roles of an opposition leader vis-a-vis the roles of the minority leader, so that we don't confuse the two, because the two come from the same function. For instance, as today, Raila Odinga is the purportedly opposition leader. Opiyo Wandayi
Mhm.
is the minority leader.
Mhm.
How is Opiyo Wandayi going to be effective in parliament while still a member of ODM party, taking orders from Raila Amolo Odinga, who is the opposition leader?
But sir, I think that's now where we call for good good leadership, yeah, whereby you know your role. Because if you look at the kind of constitution we have, it is more or less borrowed, yeah. On the countries that it is borrowed from, they allied to that fact and they obey it. So I think one mistake maybe we might have done was we did not look ourselves as Kenya and our diversity and see on how we can accommodate our views, but look at how it works in other countries and thought it would work for us. So I think there, Opio and I just should just be himself.
He cannot be himself in the Kenya's political dynamics. I know Opiyo Wandayi must play by the rules, and that begs the question: how transparent, honest, and reliable are our leaders?
Mm.
We have leaders who say yes when they mean no, and no when they mean yes, and maybe when they're completely out of touch.
Mhm.
A leader must stand firm. You must say no when you really mean no, and say yes when you really mean yes. But that is the case we have. So, before we diverted from that, remember, what is the concept behind the NUSU MKATE, the dialogue, the handshake? All this has been an initiative that seeks to unify a country that is largely divided on or along political and ethnic lines. For instance, in the last elections, the Kikuyus voted not because they loved William Ruto, but because they wanted to vote against Raila Odinga. There is the Raila Odinga phobia in Mountain. I've been in these discussions. I don't fear opening up about them because that is what happens even in our mainstream media. So when we vote along tribal lines, we vote people not based on their character and personality, but based on their ethnic extractions and regions of origins, then we miss it. So the entire concept of dialogue is to try bring the people together, which is a good concept. But again, what happens? Cartels, both political cartels and economic cartels, hijack the entire process and streamline their unconstitutional advancements in that particular process, ending up diluting the entire narrative, and something um, funny comes out of it. Remember, even the BBI, there were claims that what was presented versus a view what was signed were two different things. Why?
Mhm.
So politicians hijack this particular process. So the idea of bringing us together after election should not be there. Let us set the processes clear so that we know after an election, everyone knows where he's falling or she's falling. Because it's like a trial and error system that after every elections, the country goes on autopilot.
Mhm.
Lives are lost,
Mhm.
property is damaged, investment is lost, the country is left in the, uh, at the masses of, that is not the way we should be going. Remember, in East Africa, Kenya has been praised as an island of peace amidst a turbulent sea. Our neighboring countries have never been peaceful. They've been in constant military instigated violence, coups here and there, but we've sustained our democracy to a better percentage. Were it not for corruption, nepotism, tribalism, selfishness, we would be somewhere better than any other person. Because in 1963, when we were gaining independence, our GDP was better than the GDP of Singapore. As we speak today, Singaporeans are one of the most strongest economies in the world. It is a small country, but it produces surplus. Their GDP is even much stronger. These are countries that were smaller than Kenya when we were poor as Kenya. It is the policies that politicians drive. So that's why I speak of cartels. When they entrench themselves in this particular process, the primary object of dialogue is missed. But before we can dialogue, let us ask ourselves, why do we need to dialogue? Because if I take it, I'm going to take everything. Let us start from there. Let us design a constitutional framework where a loser automatically assumes the office of the opposition that is funded by the government, not by the government, but by the state or the government through the people. I mean, funded by the people through the government, so that we have checks and balances held. Because why should we have opposition working together with the government? That is not political maturity. That is political conmanship. I can tell you for a fact. Because all these guys are politicians. Remember things that happened in during the handshake. William Ruto was the deputy president. He became a displaced ion and assumed the role of opposition leader. An opposition leader who sits in the Security Council, draws salaries, and is driven in chauffeurs. I look at the Honorable Raila Odinga, an opposition leader who became the deputy president, running around SUVs, red carpet, etc. Then you ask yourself, where are we as a country? A minister purported to be more stronger than a deputy president. The deputy president was complaining than the opposition. So we have it's a confusion. There is no political maturity in this. In as much as it seeks to um, give a roadmap for political development, still we miss it a big deal because politicians still call the shots and they run the show.
Oh, okay, thank you. You
But
talked.
the idea of handshake and etc, I think it seeks to unite or attempts to unite a country that is largely divided on tribal lines and ethnic extractions. That is it.
Okay, you talked about like the dialogue. It comes with a way of bringing people together, and from maybe disagreement in politics. But when you look at during the violence or during that period whereby we are in turmoil, there are people who lost their life. There are people who their property are, are damaged,
Destroyed.
destroyed, and everything. But now, when it comes to justice, yeah, the people especially do not get justice. Even as from today, the people from 207, there are those who I think are still looking for that justice, and it is something that is cycle, is every cycle. Why is that one happening?
Because this is a game of mafias. For them to thrive, they must divide you first. They will run for the same seat on different tickets. They will design failure of the process. They will protest it. They will sit together. They will design how to share power, then drop you like a hot potato. There are people who have to go for street protest, for others to eat well and run around in big machines. Yes, in the just recently concluded hot confrontation or violent confrontation between the public security apparatus and the people, especially in the lakeside city of Kisumu, where I used to work. I was working in one of the leading regional hospitals. I saw young men at their prime ages who were victims of gunshots. These men did nothing other than going to the streets to protest for the high cost of living to be lowered by the government. Their mistake was nothing but demanding for an electoral justice, because there has never been peace without justice. You must do me justice, then I have to maintain peace. These young men were brutally met their death in the hands of the security apparatus. To make the matters worse, the then IG claimed that the opposition hired dead bodies and paraded as victims of police brutality. I can confirm to you that the two brothers who were murdered in Kisumu, my office was adjacent to the mortuary. I walked in there one of the afternoon after lunch with a team of colleague students. We saw the bodies lying side by side, and those injuries were peculiar from minor injuries. As a patriotic citizen, it took me down, because seeing myself or an age mate lying down for unjustifiable cause, and these are people who were smoked out of their houses, and it was assumed that they participated in the demonstration during the day, so they were being smoked out at night and beaten like thugs, because that is the uh, 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 information that their parents uh, gave to the general public. Then, after a few days, people said, draw something in the name of a post electoral pact report and seek the same people to endorse it. No, 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 Ben. We must stop lying to ourselves. Life is precious. Of all the things anyone can guard in this life is life.
Mhm.
Because once lost, no reverse gear. You go as you go. You live as you go. No coming back.
Mhm.
So, uh, we really have to see a way of blocking this. If people can sit after disagreement, then people can sit before disagreement. Must young men and women die? Must young men be shot? Must young women be raped? Must property be destroyed for political truce to be built? No. If really these people mean well for the country, they can identify the shortcomings earlier, design specific safety nets and safety measures, then trade with caution in the entire process, and we find a safe landing. We must not go to an election blindly, knowing that there is inadequate preparation, only for us to protest the results and wipe the public emotion through mandamano, and the young men and women be killed and left, their families left on their own. Remember, this is a festive season. On 23rd, going forward, or 22nd, young men and women are going to troop the village. Remember, some of these prime young men were the pillars of their families. Those women, those men, those families are broken beyond repair, as they see son to person neighbor A arriving home in style, and theirs was murdered in Nairobi, and there's no sufficient reasons for that. We want to move to a country where people are going to take individual responsibility for any criminal activity that borders peace and stability of this country. So we really need to amend the constitution, not to create power and positions for people like Musalia Mudavadi. We need to amend the constitution to give a clear framework where the second runners up in an election is going to fall. We really need to amend the constitution to find a clear way on how the integrity of the elections are going to be sealed 100%. We really need to amend the constitution to ensure the independence of these independent organizations, or to seek for entrenchment of independence. We really do not need to amend the constitution to create more positions after an election. No, if we amend it this time round, then we put it in our culture that automatically when you lose to the declared winner, you assume the office of the opposition leader. But again, constitutional amendment is a long process. Several factors determines that. As of to date or now, Kenya is not ready for an for a referendum. A referendum requires money. Remember President William Ruto, since he took power 14 to 13 months ago, he has borrowed 2 trillion uh, from the lenders. Do we really stand a chance? The fuel is still retailing at 212 as per the just reviewed IPRA prices. Schools are opening in January. People are battling with cost of living. Are we really stable to conduct an election? But I can bet you, if you were to go for a referendum today, the government will do it. The government will do it without any restraint, because money is always there. Have you ever seen a ballot paper delaying to be delivered in one of the most remote areas in this country because of poor transport? Choppers will deliver them, but choppers will never deliver medicine to those places. Security will always remain a public concern in those regions. So it is the interest we have for this country that really matters, and not who we are as individuals. Because the who we are should be reflected in our utterances, in our public conduct, and even private conduct.
Okay, let's talk about nationalhood, about our country. And when I talk of nationalhood, is something that bring what I call Kenyanness. That when I see you, I see Kenya in you. When I see somebody from Central Kenya, I see Kenya in them. But when you look at our politics, it's not about nationalhood. It's about the politic of conquer. It's not a politics of idea. Is how will I see maybe seeing the right prime minister going to Bondo? It's about taking somebody home. That is what it's all about. But rather than not what kind of idea maybe Baba is selling, or Salia Mudavadi or Kalonzo, how can we move away from that and come in a politics of ideology where we compete one another in terms of ideology, but not in terms of conquering you to show you how less you are or how less powerful you are?
Let me tell you, Ben, just as I have said earlier, that the competition for power is the genesis of challenges bedeviling our country. Inadequate mass or civic education is another problem. In 1963, suddenly Kenya was celebrating Kenya at 60 yesterday. The successive regime was fighting poverty, ignorance, and diseases. Unfortunately, ignorance has been one of the persistent challenges stretching 60 years down independence. It has stretched to an extent that a Luo will not go to the ballot to vote, not because they want to elect a leader, but they will go to vote in 2027 to punish Kikuyus. Kikuyus will again vote in 2032 to punish Luos. And the cycle continues. So the lack of nationhood in us is a recipe of weak political values that we have. The leaders we have do not have the national values. In our constitution, under Article 10, the constitution is crystal clear on issues that borders national values. But again, I said we have leaders in politics and politicians in leadership, and that is where we get it wrong.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. When we got the NADCO report, especially from the members that were selected to lead the NADCO report, one of the things that stood out was cost of living. And the cost of living from the report, it was said they were not able to agree on the cost of living. And other areas, especially increasing the number of IBC officials from 7 to 9, creating a position, that one was agreed upon, but the cost of living was not agreed upon. And again, the youths generally were not included in the negotiation. What would you say about that? Because I'm seeing it is also bringing some disagreement within Azimio principle.
Those disagreeing Azimio principles to begin with are liars to themselves. Someone like Eugene Wamalwa sat in that particular committee from the beginning all the way to the end. If Eugene Wamalwa was very passionate about the political transformation in this country, he would have resigned and withdrew himself from that committee then, including even Martha Karua. These people know exactly what was being discussed. And I say politics is a game of mind. How sure are you that it's not another decoy to keep us busy as the helpless population? So, by these people coming out to say they don't endorse the report, I fully fault them. They are liars, and no one should take them serious for anything, by the way. And
Mhm.
on matters NADCO report, I, as the supposedly opposition youth leader, because I'm the only one who speaks for youths in this country passionately, I don't take support from government, neither do I draw support from the opposition. But I do so out of goodwill and out of patriotism. When this committee was convened, I opposed it. I said you cannot convene a committee to discuss national issues where young people constitute 75% of the general population and they miss in the framework. I opposed the idea of sitting around a table by politicians lazily sipping tea and mandazi to discuss on how to lower the cost of living. The cost of living is an economic factor attributed or attached to politics in bits. The cost of living is not a concept that emanated, the high cost of living is not a concept that emanated from the Kenya within us. It is a concept that has been driven by foreigners. And I will explain to you. You've seen the dalliance between President William Ruto and the international financial schemes and institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. The World Bank gives loans on conditions. And just as I said, it is reported that he has taken a loan of 2 trillion in less than 2 years.
Mhm.
These conditions, they are always punitive and non-progressive. For instance, the highly protested sale and not privatization of KICC, to my understanding as an economist, is a concept driven by World Bank. or the IMF, sorry, the IMF, they're telling you you have this loan, yes. You have to pay it, right? Yes. You go sell this property at this price, then give us our money. Remember, the university funding was changed drastically when William took over power. Structural adjustments are concepts that are well strongly instituted in the IMF uh, operational framework. The loans, every gazette you read, the IMF has agreed, has approved. The IMF board of, I don't know what has approved an increment of XYZ billion to Kenya in terms of loans. In whose interest? When all these loans accumulate, the punitive interest rates imposed on them, the short durations of payment translates to high cost of living, especially when we are not a producer economy but a consumer economy. We import almost everything. When we import, we build the value of the dollar because it is the international exchange medium. As the dollar goes higher, the shillings becomes weaker. Thus, the high cost of living. The high cost of living refers to that amount of money that you, me, and we require to sustain our daily living standards. You need to pay rent, you need to pay transport, you need to pay school fees, you need to pay a medication, you need to, all this culminates into the high cost of living or the cost of living. But now the cost of living is high. So the genesis of high cost of living could not be solved by a mere convening meeting, a mere boardroom meeting where politicians sit around to discuss their political interest in decoy of national interest. No. Cost of living is an economic concept that requires non-partisanism or non-partisan approach and non-political affiliation to address because numbers don't lie. In economics, there is nothing like hearsay. It is figures and statistics. That is a foreign language to politicians. They could not understand. So that's why they will never solve the cost of living in boomers. Not even in State House when they convene a boardroom meeting. The cost of living can only be lowered through policy reanalysis, readjustments, and reevaluation, where we are going to put a mark on how much a country like Kenya can borrow. When they took over power, they exceeded the limit. We cannot
Oh,
solve the cost of living. We are only going to solve the cost of living when we embrace a producer economy. A producer economy can only be embraced by creating fair or conducive environment for entrepreneurial activities. Come and try setting up a business in Kenya today. The high number of taxes that you require to pay to the government is more than the financial input you want to start with as a starting capital. Are we really going to lower the cost of living? These are some of the truth that politicians will never tell you. I have nothing to gain or to lose, but I'm more losing by saying this. We really need to create that entrepreneurial environment. Yesterday, I clashed with some group of Kanjos in Nairobi when I was walking in the evening, and young women and men who were selling some clothes in the streets were being chased like uh, foreigners in State House. And then I asked them, "Where do you draw your authority? Do you know the State House guard is a product of hustling? He was once an hustler selling chicken in Sugoi. That is subject to confirmation. You cannot chase these people out of this street and you still want these people to contribute revenue that is going to pay you and sustain this government. How are we going to produce as a country if we do not really produce, create an enabling environment where young men and women are going to thrive economically, that cannot really work. So we really need to readjust and reevaluate our policies so as to ensure that entrepreneurial activities are given the foremost attention, because we are battling high cost of living, we are battling high rates of unemployment, we are battling high rates of crime. This can only be sought out when there is enough civic education, when there is a productive environment where entrepreneurial and innovative acts can be appreciated. Remember, the government today, the Ministry of Youth, led by Babu Namwamba, is only focusing on TikTok and trending videos. You wonder whether everyone is going to trend on TikTok. We have we need to harness and exploit this untapped potential. Some people can just speak perfectly without reading from anywhere. That is a potential that must be nurtured. Not everyone plays football. Not everyone dances on TikTok. People are talented differently. We really need to advance, to identify or realize the diversity in the talent world so as to create an environment where every talent is going to be appreciated. So, the bottom line of my conversation is that a cost of living, which is a generational challenge, cannot be solved by a mere one time sitting.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, let me come to a little bit of leadership. And I know there are so many young Kenyans who are aspiring to be leaders in our country. And in the near future, there will be people in those seats. But I'm seeing this trend of politics whereby it is about the insult of the uh, the elders in politics. So maybe you can insult the right honorable prime minister, or you can insult, I mean, the president, um, William Ruto, Dr. William Ruto. And if you do that kind of politics, maybe I don't know, it's for fame or it's for what. And these are young politicians that we say, okay, these are the leaders that are coming in. And if that is the kind of politics that is being done of insult, how are we safe, the voters, that they're the right leaders for us when the generation that we have right now exit the political space?
Ben, let me tell you, a leader draws respect by virtue of character.
Mm.
A politician draws respect by virtue of position. There are several politicians or leaders we call so that I do not really recognize, neither do I respect them, because they don't deserve my attention. I believe I'm better placed than them when it comes to proper leadership. The only difference is that I'm not contested to ascertain how fit I am, but I can tell.
Mm.
You don't need rocket science to tell that this building is collapsing. A collapsing building will always be visible miles away. It depends, and it begs the question of why are you even in politics? People are in politics, and by the way, I do say that it's not a matter of uh, you being in politics or being a young person that you will tell us that I'm a young person. What value do you add besides your age?
Mm.
Not because some of us young people want to get into governance or leadership, not to lead and bring transformational change, but to join the chain of cartels, looters, murderers, so as to plant the wealth that we have and to join the circles of untouchables. They are not running, some of them are not running into these positions to create some fundamental or ground some fundamental changes. Majority are running so that they want to join the circles of the untouchables, to manifest the opulence that has been expressed by the politicians in those particular seats. So young people must first ask themselves, why do they want to join politics or those respective leadership positions? Is it to gain power, fame, or influence? Is it to ground meaningful change? Is it to stand by the rule of law and the people? That's an individual question. But my general observation, because I connect with youths all the way to the world levels in this country, I can tell you, not all of us are running for these seats to lead the people to the promised land. Some of them just want to make a kill for themselves while pretending to be saviors. No. So when you see a politician insulting the other, at the end of the day, you ask yourself, if I stand here today to insult President William Ruto, how does that seek to solve the prevailing challenge that requires his attention? If I decide to insult Raila Amolo Odinga, how is that a solution to the existing challenges? No, not once, for not twice, but severally. When I was a Kenya Kwanza adherent, several attempts were made to manipulate me on media to hurl abusive or unprintable words against the person of Raila Amolo Odinga. And I told them, you know what? My politics is transformational. My leadership ambitions do not end with Kenya Kwanza. Kenya Kwanza will just be like any other vehicle tire that is bought new and removed, worn out. I will not peg my conversations on insult. Rather, I would speak through issues the way they come and what deserves my attention. I developed numerous challenges, and psychophants never saw me as a good boy. I met oppositions left, right, and center. Exclusion, deliberate exclusion from uh, the political process. But above all, I stood my ground that I know what I want, how I want it, and how I will get it, but not through that route. So it is upon you to decide for yourself, what do you want? The
Okay.
politics of uh, insults, no, blackmails zilipitwa na wakati.
Okay, asante sana Bwana Sankara kwa hayo maneno. Maybe your last remark to our viewers before we wind up.
I would tell our viewers that currently our status as a country is in shambles. There is nothing pretty good to celebrate because we can't celebrate when we hear that we are living in a country where a police officer can be attacked and killed. Not one, not twice. That the citizens can be killed under unclear circumstances. That a pregnant woman can be swept with floods, and the person of a deputy president say that stop taking yourself to where the floods are. I cannot celebrate when floods are sweeping people and the minister in charge of energy is telling us that the constant blackouts we're experiencing at JKIA is as a result of inadequate water in the dams. Do you even auction our water as well? Is this government selling even our water? We cannot celebrate today, 60 years after independence, for the person of the deputy president to come and claim that the power outages we've been experiencing at JKA and other uh, monumental buildings in the country is as a result of fault generators that were bought by the previous administration, which the current commander in chief was the deputy to. So these are outright lies that do not deserve celebrations. In fact, I would advise every other Sen Kenyans to start ululating wherever they are. Instead of greeting these people, just cry. At least maybe if you cry, they will listen to you. But I would say it is the art of a civilized mind to entertain other people's thoughts and opinions respectfully in as much as you do not agree to them. And the underlining word there is entertainment. We can disagree to agree, but remember, politicians will never be there for you. Today, where I stay, my next neighbor is a Kikuyu. My friend from the plot is a Kikuyu. My mama Mboga is a Kamba. My border guy is probably a lawyer, but we only come to know who we are when politicians knock. So stupid is you and me, who detach from our uh, good social life for temporary pleasures and deceit. In Swahili, they say, or let me just say in English, form is temporary, but class is permanent. So you either choose to go for form and leave class. The Kenya Kwanza voters chose form because they saw one who was very much eloquent on top of roof cars. They thought he was the best. Now you missed the class, and that is where we are. We have to take the swallows, the doses together. Meanwhile, we will not run away. It's not a wish of a patriot for his country to collapse. When your country collapses, even you collapse. It is your responsibility to learn from your mistakes. Soldier on together as a united people to ensure that what divides us be not more than what unites us. I believe a lot of things unite us as the people of Kenya, but very petty things divide us. You ask somebody, why do you hate Uhuru Kenyatta? They will not give a substantive reason because they are a Luo. You ask someone today, why do you hate William Ruto? They will not give a reason just because their political figure told them William Ruto is bad. We really need to embrace and invest in our education system so that young men and women are going to think outside the box or rather create new boxes with thinking avenues. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you very much, my brother. And this is always a place whereby we will be discussing issues about our country. And for our viewers, thank you so much for supporting us. And I know next week we'll also be having another guest who we will share the history of our country and how we should build our country, not in terms of political affiliation, but we look at Kenyanness in us and build our nationalhood. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Bye bye, and may God bless Kenya.